done it! They have finally detailed key performance, specification, and architectural information for Zen 6, well, for servers anyway. The takeaway is that AMD's next generation of products is extremely impressive, with big overhauls in the core count, memory bandwidth has gone way into the stratosphere, we have chunky overhauls of the architecture, and as for core clocks, well, they have gone up significantly for the server. And this brings us to an obvious question. For those who are not interested in the server market and instead want to play video games or just do other stuff at home, what about the next generation of Ryzen processors, Ryzen 10,000 or whatever it ends up being called? Will we see clock frequencies sail past 6 GHz, sail past 6.5 GHz, maybe even reach that lofty 7 GHz? Well, I have a lot to talk to you guys about this because there's some very interesting disclosures that AMD have made, and also disclosures about Zen 7 and even 8. Plus, if you're a gamer and considering buying a new graphics card, I've got some bad news for you because if you're considering Nvidia anyway, well, there seems to be some rumours that there's going to be some price increases. At least according to board partners, and we're going to get into all of this plus some more stuff after this quick message from the sponsor of the video. This video is sponsored by WhoKeys. Get reliable, fast and cheap delivery of legitimate Windows 11, Windows 10 and Microsoft Office keys. We've been there before, that video game that you've been looking forward to for months on end. Or maybe you're just browsing the internet and suddenly, bang, Windows activation reminder pops up, totally breaking your immersion despite the fact that you've been trying to block it out the best you can up until this point. Haunts you like a villain out of a survival horror game. You don't need to break the bank to pick up your copy of Windows 11. You can get all of the features such as being able to customize your desktop and of course not be bothered by that activation reminder. And you can pick this up courtesy of WhoKeys. Buying your key on WhoKeys is super simple and is a fast and easy as well as safe process. I personally have purchased several keys on my own personal account using WhoKeys, as well as several of my friends have bought not just Windows but Microsoft Office and other even software such as games as well, and have had absolutely no problems at all. For example, you can pick up Windows 11 Pro for just $30 96 instead of the full price of $208. And if you do prefer to stay on Windows 10, it may be a good idea for you instead to pick up the LTSC version, which has extended support for your confidence, because this means you'll be able to get many of the critical security and vulnerability patches. And this is available for just $11.10 with our code RGT. You simply buy your key and within just a few seconds you are given it on screen, and of course you can also access it via email. There is no stress, no fuss, just safe and quick and convenient. So what are you waiting for? You can click the link in the video description below, and of course it's also the pinned comment, and you can use our coupon code RGT, that is RGT, to net yourself 25% off site-wide. And again, you can pick up Windows 11, Microsoft Office, games, and lots of other stuff besides. It's safe, fast and convenient. So once again, thanks to WhoKeys for sponsoring the video. I believe this headline from Hassan at WCCF Tech really does highlight some of the nice selling points of the next generation of EPYC processors. Venice stomps Vera, which by the way, Nvidia detailed just the day prior, 20% higher in single core and over 2x higher in throughput. Massive improvement, of course, in the core counts with Zen 6, but over 5 GHz in clock frequency. But there are some caveats, and we still don't know all of the information for these processors. So, first of all, let's just talk about the obvious stuff, because when we are looking at these processors, I think we can all agree that the general, information that we're seeing here is very impressive. For example, 96 cores with 5 GHz, 256 cores, 512 threads. That's one of the slides here. And this slide, up to 96 cores, 16 channels, up to 12,800 MTS. There's a large L3 cache, around 1.1 gigabytes by the way, and up to 5.15 gigahertz in clock frequency. Naturally, AMD have done a lot of stuff for Venice. You can see, for example, again, 256 cores, 512 threads, 96 cores, 192 threads. up to 600 watts, and in terms of I/O, well, there's just a lot of it. 128 lanes for 1P, and that's Gen 6. There's also memory expansion, 5th generation EPYC fabric, and yeah, memory bandwidth has gone up significantly here. They are officially supporting 8000 MTS memory, but unfortunately there are still some questions. IPC, what is it? Well, you can start to do some kind of like-for-like comparisons and start to try weed out clock frequencies, but in terms of an actual number that AMD have provided, nothing. That's a little disappointing, but we don't have an actual IPC gain. So they haven't, for example, said that it's 12% faster on average. Now, there have been a lot of rumors. It's around 8 to 12, 13% on average, but AMD still haven't officially disclosed this. And there are some other things as well. Now, I do believe, just to put my cards on the table, that Zen 6 is going to be very impressive. For Ryzen, I think it's going to be a very good, actually, very, very good. The Ryzen processors we have pretty much certain of at this point are going to be up to 24 cores, 48 threads for the highest end, 50% increase then over the previous generation for Zen 5. We also have a corresponding increase in the L3 cache, and of course V cache, and just a lot of other stuff. Plus, again, memory bandwidth is going up significantly, and there's going to be a lot of improvements on the cache, and just it's just going to be a lot better, basically. However, I think it's very difficult right now to get a comprehensive and complete understanding of exactly what Ryzen is going to function like. So I'll give you guys a couple of quick examples here. By the way, if you want to know more about the official stuff from AMD, I'll leave, of course, links to WCCF Tech as well as AMD's own websites in the description, so you can check that out. I don't want to focus too much on this because I want to focus mostly on the Ryzen processors, but let's take a little peek, shall we? A little gander. So first of all, we'll pick on Zen 5 based EPYC processors. So I want you guys to check this out. So obviously, there are a lot of these different processors, you know, everything from just 8 cores, 16 threads, all the way up to 192 cores, 384 threads, and obviously clock frequencies vary significantly, for example, 3.7, 4.5, and obviously the base clocks here are, you know, let's say very low 2 gigahertz to around mid 3 gigahertz, like for example there is 3.65 and 4.8. I think that's one of the highest frequency. That's a frequency chip for 48 threads, just for example. Now if we look at Zen 6 processors, they have them under 906, I'm just going to say 06 just for the sake of this video, so the SP7 and SP8s basically. So these are the dense variants. We have 256 core, 512 threads. So the max boost clock, 4.1, 4.8, up to 5. And obviously we saw other chips earlier that go up to 5.15. The problem is these are not all core speeds. And for example, I already made this filter a moment ago, but this is a comparison of their different processors. This is 128 cores. So you can see this is a couple of different generations here. This is the 04, 05, and 06 series. So these are all 128 cores, 256 threads. So if we look at the max boost clock and I mouse over that, you can see that this is for a single core, and all core is, well, all the cores working together, and obviously base is just the base frequency of the processor without any boosting coming into the equation. So roughly speaking, we have 2.4 and 2.7, and then 2.7 up to 3.15, and again, these are all 128 core processors. Obviously, there are some differences in TDP. I don't actually know if it lists the TDP. So they don't even tell you some of the TDPs, unfortunately, for these processors. They do, however, tell you some other stuff, for example, the bandwidth per processor, memory speeds, all of that stuff. So that's cool. Memory channels also go up significantly. Okay, well, anyway, the point is that it's a big improvement. So obviously we can do this until the cows come home. We can choose different processors. For example, here is 192. That's an 05 and 06 series, up to 3.7, up to 4. So that's a pretty chunky increase. The base clock has gone up really high. So from 2.25 up to 2.9. But again, just like I said earlier, we could keep doing this, but there are some differences as well in the power consumption with some specific SKUs versus some specific SKUs. So it becomes a little difficult. My point is, with up to 5.15 gigahertz, there is some confusion online, and it does seem, at least from what I'm seeing, that this is not all-core. This is basically just a couple of threads loaded together. Now, if we pick on a different processor entirely, the 9850X3D, this is obviously from the Zen 5 lineup. Where are we? Here we go. Up to 5.6 gigahertz, 4.7 for the base frequency. Now, this is an 8-core processor, of course. And there are some other very interesting ones. For example, this one. This is a part of the 06 series as well. So again, Zen 6 is a frequency-based processor up to 5 gigahertz. But you can't really compare this. It's an SP8 socket. And basically, obviously, it's not necessarily the same thing. With that said, I think we can agree that the frequency is much higher for Zen 6. But I don't necessarily know if you could just jump and say, well, it's going to definitely mean like 6.7 gigahertz or 7 gigahertz or something like that for Ryzen 10,000 or whatever it ends up being called. For one, we still don't 100% know all of the frequency information, to be honest with you. We are making a lot of speculative guesses. The second problem is typically AMD do cherry pick the best silicon for the servers. The next point is that the IHS is different, as well as the heat density of a AM5 socket versus, let's say, a server. And all of these things do come into the equation. The IHS, if memory serves for Zen 5, for example, is a little thicker. So that means that you're getting less thermal transfer versus, well, if it was thinner. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can kind of like lap the processor and stuff like that and get quite a lot of improvement in temperatures. But again, my point is that you can make a lot of speculation, but with the disclosures that AMD have provided, I don't think you can make exact guesses. I do, however, think that 6.2, 6.3 gigahertz is very likely with Zen 6. And you have to also take into consideration that that's not including the fact that you've got, again, way more cores. So the core count is going up massively. That also will increase the amount of cache as well. Let's just take this processor versus the 12-core version. So for example, the 12-core version, the cache is going to go up for L3. So 50% increase in L3 cache, 50% increase in the core count. Let's ignore the clock frequency and stuff like that for a second. Now, the reason that the L3 cache going up is a really big deal is because if you get an application like a game and only uses, let's say, 6 or 8 cores, roughly, let's say it's only roughly loading about half the cores or so, this extra cache is still available to those more loaded cores. So, of course, performance is going to go up a decent chunk. And therefore, I think that that's going to be a really big deal. The other point, of course, is that games are starting to use more and more cores anyway, especially as people start to do other stuff. My point is that I think that the Zen 6 processors for Ryzen are going to be really impressive. And that's not even taking into account things like the IPC gain. I think that 10% on average is quite lowballing it, honestly. But let's even assume a 10% increase. I again think that's quite low, but let's assume 10% on average is true. And then also faster memory. It's going to be very interesting, by the way, to see how memory scales with this thing. I am actually pretty confident the next generation of Ryzen CPUs is going to be really good. By the way, sorry I'm sweating a little bit. It is really hot right now. I haven't been running the air conditioning in the office, and I am paying for it, my friends. I am paying for it in spades. Before, however, I close out the video, I'm going to talk to you about this stuff. So, this one's quite interesting. Yeah, basically, board channels, or bench life, should I say, via board channels, are basically saying that, that there's going to be price increases for GDDR7 and also some GDDR6 products as well. There's also other stuff, for example, PCB, cooling systems, and packaging, but most of the stress is coming again from the memory. Now, honestly, these reports of increases in prices are nothing new. It seems like this seems to run the gamut every couple of months. So, I don't know. We'll wait and see on this one. I don't want to panic anyone. Like, my personal opinion is that the super cards, I just don't think they're going to launch anytime soon. Like, RTX 50 Super, like, apparently Video Cards ran an article recently where they're basically saying that the cost of 3GB GDDR7 modules is still really high, so they're not going to launch a super cards anytime soon. Like I keep saying, I just don't think that's going to happen this year. I think it's going to be early next year at the earliest, if that makes any sense. So I think it's one of those things where, and it's like, just buy it. Just, that sounds so stupid. Just come up with the money for a 5070 or 5090, right? It's just fine. Just buy it. But yeah, like it's one of those dumb situations where if you can just buy the cards, I think in the future prices may go up, but it's very difficult to know, to be honest with you, if this actually does come through, because like allegedly this was going to happen with AMD, if you remember, a couple of times as well with the Ryzen 9000 series, and then at retailers we saw a price crash. However, obviously certain RX 9000 cards are not selling as well, so it's also a little difficult. Oh, I also want to just mention this really briefly. I wasn't going to bring this up, but I felt like I had to, because it's just kind of irked me and I kept forgetting to cover it. I won't spend long on this, but basically 5090 SE. So this was leaked allegedly by Game GPU. Now they mention on Overclock 3D that the specifications don't make sense with a 384-bit memory bus. Basically, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you could technically, from my understanding, from speaking to a few people, Blackwell would support a mixed memory configuration, so you could have some modules doing like 2 and some modules doing 3 or whatever. But I just don't think, first of all, that would be a bit weird. Secondly, I just don't think that the 5090 SE is true. I think if they were going to do this, they would just have the 5080 Ti, or they'd bump the specifications of the 5080 Super, which they're clearly not doing. But also, I spoke to a couple of sources, and the sources I've spoken to said it's BS, the 5090 SE. Now, that's not to say it's not going to happen. Again, it's only the people I've spoken to, so maybe they have better sources. Maybe Jensen Huang himself has said, yeah, I'm doing this, bro. But to my understanding, I just don't think it's going to happen. So we'll see. Like, can I just also rant for a second? You see the specifications of this, like, forget the memory for a second, just forget that for a sec. But you see this, you see the SM count here of 110? I really wish that this is what the 5080 launched with at the start. Even, you know what, even if it had been a little lower than this, even if it had been like 100-ish SM, like 96 SM, something around there, but 84, I don't want to use the word measly, but also, yeah, it's measly. Give me more, man. I feel like, fuck me, I feel like Oliver Twist. Please, Jensen, can I have some more? But yeah, I don't know, like, I just don't believe this is, I just don't think this is a thing. That's just my personal opinion. With that said, I'm going to let you all go before I die of heat exhaustion. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do. It's YouTube. Leave a like and subscribe if you've not. I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.